What if I told you that a tiny creature, small enough to sit on your fingertip, is responsible for keeping a third of the world's food alive? You've probably heard the quote often linked to Albert Einstein, that if bees disappear, humans would only survive 4 years. That quote may not be real, but the warning behind it is, because scientists agree on something just as serious. Without bees, the global food system starts breaking down within years. And here's the problem: bees are already disappearing. There are around 20,000 species of bees on Earth, but most people only know one, the honeybee. The rest live quietly, almost invisible to us. They nest in the ground, in trees, in cracks, pollinating plants without ever being noticed. The honeybee is the one humans have spread across the world. It's tiny, about the size of your fingernail, light enough that you barely feel it land, and yet it's part of one of the most advanced systems in nature. A bee's body is simple: head, thorax, abdomen. But its abilities are anything but simple. It can see ultraviolet light. To us, flowers look plain. To a bee, they're glowing maps, guiding it straight to nectar. Its antennae can detect smell, temperature, humidity, even tiny vibrations in the air. And on its back legs, it carries pollen, packed into small baskets like golden cargo. Now imagine not one bee, but tens of thousands. A hive is not just a group. It behaves like a single living organism. Scientists even call it a superorganism. Inside a hive, there is one queen. Her only job is to reproduce. She can lay up to 2,000 eggs per day. There are thousands of worker bees, all female, doing every job you can imagine. And then there are drones, the males, whose only purpose is to mate. Worker bees live about 6 weeks in summer. The queen can live up to 5 years. But here's what's truly incredible. No one gives orders. There is no boss, no manager, no central control. Each bee simply knows what to do. A young bee starts by cleaning, then feeding larvae, then building the hive, then guarding it. And only at the end of its life does it leave the hive to collect nectar. No meetings, no instructions, no confusion, just perfect coordination. And then there's how they communicate. In 1946, scientist Carl von Frisch discovered something unbelievable. Bees talk by dancing. When a bee finds food, it returns to the hive and performs a specific movement, a dance. That dance tells other bees 3 things: where the food is, how far it is, and how good it is. Other bees watch, and then fly directly to that exact location. This is one of the few examples in nature of symbolic communication, something we usually think only humans can do. Now let's talk about honey, because honey isn't just something sweet. It's the result of a long, complex process. A bee visits flower after flower, sometimes over 1,000 in one trip, collecting nectar and storing it in a special organ. Then it returns to the hive and passes that nectar to another bee, and another, and another. Each time, enzymes break down the sugars. Water content slowly drops. The bees fan their wings to evaporate moisture, and when it's ready, they seal it inside a honeycomb cell. To make just 1 teaspoon of honey, bees travel a combined distance of about 120,000 kilometers. That's like circling the Earth twice. And one bee, in its entire lifetime, produces only half a teaspoon, which means every spoon of honey you eat represents the life's work of multiple bees. And honey never spoils. Jars found in ancient tombs, thousands of years old, are still edible today. But honey is not the most important thing bees give us. The real value is pollination. About 80% of flowering plants depend on pollinators, and a huge portion of that work is done by bees. Roughly 1/3 of the food we eat exists because of them. Apples, strawberries, almonds, coffee, chocolate. Without bees, these foods don't disappear overnight, but they become rare, expensive, and eventually scarce. You'd still have crops like wheat and rice, but your diet would become extremely limited, and ecosystems? They begin to collapse. Plants disappear first, then insects, then birds, then predators. A chain reaction from the ground up. So why are bees disappearing? Since the early 2000s, scientists have observed a sharp decline. This phenomenon is known as colony collapse disorder. Bees leave the hive and never return. No bodies, no trace, just an empty hive. The causes are complex. Pesticides damage their nervous systems. they lose memory, they lose direction. Parasites weaken their bodies and spread disease. Modern farming creates vast areas with no food diversity. Climate change disrupts flowering cycles, and weakened bees become more vulnerable to infections. All of these factors combined are pushing bee populations down. So what happens if bees disappear completely? In the first year, crop yields drop, food prices rise. Within a few years, shortages begin. Ecosystems start collapsing, and eventually, a significant portion of global food production is at risk. Organizations like FAO have warned about this scenario. Could technology replace bees? Scientists are working on solutions: robot pollinators, drones, artificial systems. But none of them come close to what bees already do for free. You cannot easily replace millions of years of evolution. And yet, despite everything, bees are extraordinary. They've existed for over 100 million years. They can recognize human faces. They can count. They can solve navigation problems more efficiently than many algorithms. When choosing a new home, they don't rely on a leader. They vote. Scouts explore different locations, return, and dance to support their choice. The colony gradually agrees and moves as one, a form of decision-making that resembles democracy, all from a creature with a brain the size of a grain. The queen bee is not genetically different from the worker bees. They start exactly the same DNA, same potential. So what makes one become a queen and the others workers? The answer is diet. All bee larvae are fed the same food for the first few days of life. But then, something changes. A few selected larvae are fed a special substance, royal jelly, continuously and in large amounts. For a long time, scientists believed this alone was what created a queen. But the truth is more complex. It's not just what the future queen eats, it's also what she doesn't eat. Worker bees are later fed pollen and honey, which contain natural plant compounds that actually suppress reproductive development. Queen larvae are protected from those substances. So while royal jelly activates growth, the absence of those suppressing chemicals allows her full development. In other words, royal jelly turns the system on. Regular bee food keeps it off. This single difference rewrites her destiny. Royal jelly is rich in proteins, nutrients, and powerful bioactive compounds. It triggers a completely different developmental pathway. The result? A queen bee becomes up to twice the size of a worker, fully fertile with developed ovaries, capable of laying up to 2,000 eggs per day, and able to live up to 5 years. Meanwhile, worker bees, with the exact same DNA, live only about 6 weeks and never reproduce. This is one of the clearest examples of epigenetics in nature, where genes don't change, but how they are expressed does. In simple terms, it's not just what you're born with, it's what activates those genes. Royal jelly essentially turns on the queen blueprint. Without it, that blueprint stays hidden. And there's more. The queen also develops a completely different role in the hive. She doesn't gather food, she doesn't build, she doesn't defend. Her entire existence is focused on one purpose: reproduction. But even then, she doesn't control the hive the way you might expect. She doesn't give orders. Instead, she releases chemical signals, pheromones, that help regulate the behavior of the entire colony. These signals keep the hive organized, stable, and functioning as one system. So in a way, the queen is not a ruler. She's more like a living signal, a biological center that keeps everything in balance. Same DNA, completely different life, all decided by food. Bees don't hibernate like many insects. Instead, they form a living cluster. The queen stays at the center. Thousands of bees surround her. They vibrate their muscles to generate heat. Even in freezing conditions, the center of the cluster stays around 35 degrees Celsius. Bees on the outside rotate inward to warm up. They literally take turns keeping each other alive. For over 100 million years, bees have been doing their job. While species rose and fell, while civilizations came and went, bees kept working, quietly. We ignore bees. We fear their sting. We don't think about them. But every fruit you eat, every flower you see, exists because of them. So here's the question. When was the last time you noticed a bee? And what happens if one day they're gone?